Good morning, everybody. The Revenue and Taxation Committee will be called to order. We'll have the secretary take a silent roll. It appears we have a quorum present and we're prepared for business today. Let's, before we start on the agenda items, ask for minutes. Representative Burns.
Thank you, Chairman Cannon. I have reviewed the minutes of the March 6, 2024 meeting. I find them to be in order and move that the committee adopt them as presented.
Very good. Thank you, Representative Burns. A motion to approve the minutes from March 6th is before us, committee. Is there discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. That motion carries. Those minutes stand approved. The only item on our agenda today is House Bill 447, Parental Choice Credit. Representative Horman is joining us today. We welcome you to our committee. Representative Horman, if you don't mind introducing yourself and telling us where you're from before you start, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, my name is Wendy Horman. I represent District 32 in Bonneville County, Idaho Falls. Many of you know that the reason I was talked into running for office in the first place was because I care about the education of every single child, no matter where they're learning. It's about the only thing that could have persuaded me to run for this position. You may have heard rumors that national organizations put us up to this. Let me assure you, those rumors are wrong. I came here with this desire in my heart, and this is why I came, to make sure that every single child has the opportunity to learn where it's best for them. Not national organizations, just me. I'll let the other co-sponsors speak to their experiences and intent and motivations. Thousands of hours, thousands of children, including my own 5 children, over the course of 3 decades. Volunteering in schools, fine arts programs, reading programs, all of the above, continuing into my school board service and my legislative service. So today I continue that effort with Representative Monks, with Senator Den Hartog, Senator Ricks, and Senator Groh, with House Bill 447, the Idaho Parental Choice Tax Credit Bill. It allows a parent to receive a refundable tax credit of up to $5,000 for qualified educational expenses, $7,500 if that child has special needs, whether that be in a private school setting, a micro school, a learning pod, or homeschool. As chairman of appropriations, budget busting bills are not my thing. So you may have heard some wild rumors about programs in other states. And there are people who can speak to that here far more decisively than I can, based on their experience. I don't want to get in the weeds in that area necessarily. However, let me state unequivocally, this bill is capped at $40 million for the TWAC, tuition, the refundable tax credits. That is the maximum that could be received for those if it is fully subscribed for children of any level. Additionally, there's $10 million appropriation for advanced grants for parents who are eligible for the earned income tax credit. So 20% of the money would go to parents who qualify for the earned income tax credit. It's all on a first come, first served basis, as you will see in the bill language. This does not take funds from public school budgets. Let me repeat that. The amount does not come from the public school budgets. The amount cannot increase unless a future legislature decides to increase it. It's in the bill. It's in statute. So JFAC can't do it. It has to be all of us. It has to be this committee and the full legislature that would change that amount. Page 3, line 2, page 4, line 46. That's the only way it can change. I want to acknowledge that there is a lot of emotional rhetoric around this issue on both sides. If you are the parent of a child who, for whatever reason, has struggled in the public system, I've been that parent. It's very emotional for you to not have access to a setting that works better for them. It's also very emotional for those who believe this will harm public education. I would not be standing here if there was a shred of evidence that this would harm public schools. In fact, the evidence points to the opposite. So I just want to make 4 points in my opening, and again, every one of them is backed by solid evidence, solid research studies. Again, if we thought this bill would harm public schools, we wouldn't be running it. 2, taxpayer dollars have been going to private schools and institutions for many years. 3, we do have choice in Idaho, and parents want more. And finally, we'll talk about accountability. First, again, if we thought this bill would harm public schools, I wouldn't be standing here, and I know none of my co-sponsors would either. We believe it will actually help public schools, and there is solid evidence, gold standard research, to prove out those points. So if you think it's going to harm public schools, I wonder if that means you believe families are generally unhappy with their public schools. I don't believe they are. I don't think very many children will take advantage of this. In fact, there's a maximum of 10,000 who could, but that's if no special education students apply for the program. So it would be 10,000 max, but it will likely be lower than that if it is fully subscribed. As I said, I've been the parent of that child for whom the public system simply wasn't working. And this was before charters. He's 35 now. This was before charters. This was, I couldn't get him into a nearby school because the classes were full, and we didn't have the resources for private school at the time. It's a painful place to be as a parent. I'm sure many of you have heard the stories nationally of charter school parents who have been thrown in jail for using grandma's address to try and get their kid into a different school. This tax credit can be a godsend for those children. So, and even if some students leave as a result of more choice options, that usually means there's more money left because the federal dollars and the local dollars don't go down because a few students leave for any reason. Those, we don't typically see school districts reducing their levies because their enrollment is declining for any reason. So allowing families to spend their SNAP dollars at Albertsons does not defund WinCo. Second, public schools already, or public funds already go to private schools and institutions in Idaho. It's been going on for many years, starting with Launch, which is our newest program that sends funding to private institutions, including religious institutions. I could and will go on. Opportunity Scholarship, Advanced Opportunity Money. The Empowering Parents microgrants are available to public and non-public students who attend public and private schools, and those who homeschool. Pell Grants go to public and private religious institutions. Medicare and Medicaid goes to public and private hospitals, including those owned by religious organizations. COVID funds went directly to private schools by federal regulation. SNAP benefits go to privately owned grocery stores. Those are just a handful of examples of public funding that benefits the public in private and religiously owned institutions. And for those legal eagles who say that sending taxpayer dollars to private schools and institutions operated by religious organizations is unprecedented or catastrophic, that is disingenuous at best, intentionally deceptive at worst. Third, parents want more choice. At the beginning of this session, Boise State released their public policy survey, and they have a question in there that says this: would you favor or oppose a plan to allow Idaho parents to take $8,000 out of the public school system and use it to enroll their child in a private or religious school. This bill does not do that. But what do you think that percentage was? 49% said yes, they would take money from public schools and allow parents to spend it in private schools. Again, this bill does not do that. 41% said they wouldn't. But last year, those numbers were 48 and 42. The gap increased slightly this year, with more in favor and fewer opposed. The issue of school choice is at the dead center of the electorate. This is not a fringe idea. This is not an extremist position. It's not radical. It's centrist. Half of respondents favored taking money from public schools. That's not what this bill does. I think there are multiple reasons parents are looking for more choice. I believe the pandemic is probably the biggest reason. For the recent surge, parents often felt helpless when their schools were closed, and they were trying to get them to reopen without success, and started looking for and creating their own options, from pandemic pods, if you will, to a lot of other creative options. But also today, parents are looking for learning options that are personalized and flexible, that match their values and fit their schedule. Remember when the only time you could watch Brady Bunch was right after school? Gilligan's Island if you had time? Or when the only way you could hear your favorite song was if you had the cassette or the record, or you happened to be listening to the radio at the right time? Well, we live in a world of personalization now. From hundreds of cable channels with DVR to on-demand streaming. We can build our own playlists. We can binge watch streaming services, or even watch sports on our own schedule. Millennial and Gen Z parents want that from schools too. They want personalized learning and flexibility so their children can learn at their own pace, in a personalized way, and on their own schedule. They are far more accustomed to customizing their lives than us Gen X grandparents, if you will. So there is solid evidence to bear out the fact that parents are looking for more choice. Finally, accountability. This bill has strong accountability for proper use of the funds, from receipt submissions to audits to potential prosecution and referrals to the Attorney General's office for investigation if funds are misused. A hotel receipt from Disneyland is not going to cut it. Even though some school districts might be classifying Disneyland as an alternate learning environment for attendance purposes these days, that's not what this bill does. This bill has strong accountability for proper use of the funds through the tax credit. But beyond strong accountability for proper use of the funds, there are lots of different types of outcomes to measure. Normally, people jump right to standardized testing. I came on the school board in 2002 when No Child Left Behind first came out. And let me just say, not every child in the state of Idaho can read yet as a result of that law. It did help us identify struggling subpopulations that we hadn't necessarily focused on before. There was tremendous value in that. But no other nation in the world does annual standardized testing the way we do it, allowing it to drive instruction and as a measure of success. When I can predict a child's test scores based on their parents' income, their parents' education, and their zip code, what use is a standardized test? So, I don't personally believe that using that as a measure of success anywhere has proven to be very effective to improve learning. You can measure it by attainment. Are the students going on to college? Are they going on to employment, enlistment, or enrollment? That's one way to measure it. You can measure it by competitive achievement. There's a a study out of Florida. They've had a tax credit in place for 15 years that showed improvements for students in all settings around student behavior and academic outcomes. Even if I believe standardized testing are not an ideal measure, it's still happening. And the evidence bears out strong competitive effects. There are studies looking at civic effects of school choice programming, from political tolerance and participation to civic knowledge and skills, volunteerism, and social capital. And one of the strongest accountability measures is certainly parent satisfaction. If a parent's at a school that they're not satisfied with in a non-public setting, they leave. And same with charters. They leave. And that is voting with your feet, shall we say. So private school choice tends to increase or have no effect on test scores, consistently drives participants to higher levels of educational attainment, shows that students in public schools achieve higher levels of attainment when there is competition. It boosts civic outcomes, and parental satisfaction is high. There is clear, high-quality research demonstrating that school choice programs can lead to better outcomes for all students, no matter where they're learning, and no matter how you measure it. So, Mr. Chairman, with that opening, I'm happy to respond to questions or move to testimony at your pleasure.
Thank you, Representative Horman. So we do have some scarcity of time today. We are due on the floor at 10 o'clock. So just kind of working backwards, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open Representative Horman up for a couple of questions. I am going to be I'm going to be a watchdog today. We aren't going to try to debate through our questions, and I will call you out on that if you do that. But if anyone on the committee has a question, needs information from Representative Horman, we'll take some questions right now. Seeing none, we will thank you, Representative Horman, and we will move to the testimony phase of the hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you. First testifier we'll hear from is Chris Cargill. Chris, if you don't mind approaching, tell us your name and who you represent. You'll have 2 minutes. Hang on just a second and let me give you a couple more ground rules. Sure. We are going to be pretty cognizant of the scarcity of time. At the conclusion of your 2 minutes, you'll see my light go on if you're paying attention, and that's your signal to give us a conclusion sentence. If you pass on that, then I will be forced to interrupt. So the time is yours at this point. Thank you.
Very good. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Chris Cargill, president of the Mountain States Policy Center. I want to thank the Representative Horman and Representative Den Hartog and the others for the invitation to testify today. I want to go through a few of our points that we've made on through the research that we've done, and then talk a little personally as well. First, as Representative Horman mentioned, this bill will not take any money out of K-12. It is a completely separate line item. So I think that's important to point out. About 50% of the state's budget, as you all know, is K through 12 education, but that doesn't mean the other 50% is a cut to the K-12 budget. So I think that's a really important point to make. It's also important to remember that the $50 million cost of this tax credit is equal to less than 1% of the state's total K through 12 allocation. So even if it did take money out of the K-12 budget, which it doesn't, we're talking a very, very small percentage. Second, it's wildly inaccurate to call this a voucher. You're probably going to hear that language today. This is not a voucher. A voucher has a very specific definition. This is not an education savings account. It is a tax credit. Our analysis shows that very few families would actually sign up for this program. And the reason for that is because families like their public schools. And to quote a former president, if you like your public school, you can keep your public school. What we're talking about here is for the small percentage of students who don't necessarily fit into the public school box. Many of those kids are special needs kids like my son. We had to take him out of the public school setting because it didn't work for him. Luckily, my wife and I had the ability to pay for all the extra therapies, all the extra tutoring that went into that. But if you think about no other question today, think about this. What about the families who can't afford that? What about the families who can't afford that? I am happy to tell you that the Heritage Foundation has ranked Idaho very high when it comes to education freedom, but the most recent number on education choice is the ranking of 29th. So I'm happy to stand for any questions that you might have, and I thank you for your consideration of this proposal today.
Thank you, Mr. Cargill. Are there questions for Mr. Cargill at this time? Yes, Representative Pickett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cargill, appreciate your presence and your comments. I was just wondering, I know there's been some studies on launch funding. Could you elaborate at all on maybe any parallels that exist between launch and what we're talking about here?
Yeah.
Mr. Cargill, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Representative Pickett. I think it's important to point out that, as you all know, we had a very heated discussion in the last legislative session about launch funding. We asked the Workforce Development Council for a list of the institutions that have been applied for that could be used for the launch funding, and it was no surprise that Boise State, University of Idaho, Idaho State were on that list, at the top of the list. But also on that list was Brigham Young University, Idaho, and Northwest Nazarene University, and dozens of other institutions that are not necessarily state taxpayer funded or state institutions. So if you want the entire list, we have it on our website at mountainstatespolicy.org, but BYU and Northwest Nazarene were up there.
Thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none, we thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next, we're going to hear from Andy Grover. As Mr. Grover is making his way up, I will say this. Many of you have heard that we don't allow remote testimony in this committee, haven't over the last couple of years at least. We did invite people to email in testimony, and many people throughout the state took advantage of that. Those emails, several dozen of those emails, have been distributed by our secretary to our folders on OneDrive, and so the committee has access to those. Committee, you're instructed to use those and give those the weight to which you deem appropriate. Mr. Grover, if you don't mind introducing yourself, tell us who you represent, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Cannon. For the record, my name's Andy Grover. I'm the Executive Director for the Idaho Association of School Administrators, and we do stand in opposition to 447. Some of those reasons are, first of all, taxes are levied in Idaho, and we all pay a proportional share to provide for the good of the state. This includes schools, roads, parks, emergency services, and more. And this is what makes our communities work, right? And we all pay a proportional share. And when you start creating tax exemptions, it is a slippery slope. I think I've owned 9 homes in Idaho now. I've yet to burn one down. You know, should I get a tax credit because I'm paying for firehouses and things like that? I think this is a real question we need to start asking ourselves. Is this direction we want to go down? The other part of this bill that we want to talk about, or that I want to talk a little bit about, is accountability. And a yes vote on this really does violate our core values of accountability. It would hand out our taxpayer dollars to families, the majority who are already paying this tuition, and have made a choice to attend private tuition-bearing schools. This body, nor the general public, would have any oversight over the direction, over basic instruction and curriculum, civic responsibility, or transparent fiduciary practices. Even parents who this bill is set out to benefit aren't provided statutory due process if their child is rejected out of these private schools. Something guaranteed by all of our public schools and protected by our Constitution. Our public schools adopt curriculum in the public and must be reviewed by our parents' committee, mandated by this legislature, and aligns to standards proposed by our state board. And it's for these reasons and other reasons that you'll hear from later folks talking about that. We do stand in opposition to 447. And with this, I stand for questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Grover. Are there questions for Mr. Grover at this time? Seeing none, thank you again for your testimony. Next, we will hear from Richard Lawton. Richard. Please introduce yourself, Richard, and the floor is yours.
Hi, my name is Richard Lawton, live in Eagle, and it's the first time I've done this. So thank you for this hearing on House Bill 447. As a parent of 2 young children, second grade and pre-K at Coal Valley Christian School, we are excited to see a bill that would allow us to use educational dollars in a manner that we believe is best for our kids. I was not born here, but have spent the majority of my life as an Idahoan and graduated from Eagle High School in what was the Meridian School District. My wife, who also attended Coal Valley Christian School when she was in elementary school, and I have chosen what we believe to be the best education available for our kids. As of now, the tuition we pay is almost 20% of our income, and at some point we fear being priced out of the education that we so love for our kids. If House Bill 447 was to be enacted, it would lift a large burden and ensure that our kids would be able to finish out their elementary and high school career at the wonderful school of Coal Valley. Being able to use educational dollars for the best education available for our children would ease a burden on our family. The language of this bill looks to not take money from the public school system, but appropriate other school funds to pay for this bill. I see no reason that this bill should be opposed by those people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Are there questions? Seeing none, thank you so much for testifying.
As I brought 2 copies, one for the secretary, where do I give that to her, or?
We can have the page go get that, and that will be provided to the secretary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Jean Henscheid. If you don't mind approaching Jean and introducing yourself, the time is yours.
Good morning, Chair Cannon and committee members. My name is Jean Henscheid. I'm co-president of the League of Women Voters of Idaho. But today, I'm going to speak on behalf of myself, and if I may take the liberty, on behalf of the 6 generations of my ancestors who lived in Idaho before me. I ask the committee to reject House Bill 447. I am from Blackfoot. You may have heard of it. In many ways and for many decades, this area was the epicenter of the resentment and division caused when taxpayer money is appropriated to religion. This practice condemned my corner of Idaho to decades of pain this bill now threatens to reignite, this time across the state. There was a time in southern Idaho when religion was given public funding to own and control water, a commodity more precious than gold in our high deserts. This was also when religious leaders instructed sugar beet farmers to deal exclusively with religiously controlled sugar beet factories. Here, too, government subsidies were used to underwrite religion. The hurt caused by this intermingling was felt on both sides when powerful opponents of one religion fought to have its members barred from voting, imprison their men, criminalize their families, and attempt to keep their elected legislators from being seated in this very building. My own Bingham County was cleaved from Oneida to separate members of one faith from their enemies. What happens when taxpayers who are asked to support all without fear or favor to write checks to religion was a formative story of my childhood. Supporters of tax credits to religious schools have offered an innocuous enough story about the consequences of asking taxpayers to pay for religion. Idahoans who have been here long enough to remember must remember, especially to leaders from my beloved Snake River Valley. I implore you to see through the rosy picture and reject this bill. Thank you. I stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Henscheid. Are there questions? Representative Pickett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Henscheid, for your testimony.
It's Dr. Henscheid.
Oh, sorry, Dr. Henscheid, thank you. I was curious, in your opposition, could you explain then and elaborate what your position might be with regard to using launch money for private or religious institutions, and what's your opinion there? Thank you.
Dr. Henscheid.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative Pickett. Launch money is currently being used for higher education K-12 institutions or K-12 schools are not receiving any of the launch money. There's a long history of using taxpayer money to support private higher education institutions. In no way is launch money going to the public school systems. Anyone who says otherwise is also being disingenuous.
Further questions, Representative Roten.
Mr. Chair and Dr. Henscheid, and launch is not what we're voting on today. We're discussing 447. And in your opinion and in your testimony, it seems to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe you would tell me, how does this seem to be running against our Blaine Amendment that with regard to the separation of state and church that the state of Idaho has in its constitution? It seems that, given the example that you have, does it seem that this bill would run afoul of that?
Dr. Henscheid.
Mr. Chair, Representative Wharton, the Blaine Amendment prevents public and religious school or private and religious schools from, especially religious schools, from receiving taxpayer money. So yes, indeed, it runs afoul. And I understand that the bill to actually remove the Blaine Amendment from the Constitution of Idaho is languishing somewhere. So I don't know that that's even an issue anymore.
Committee, are there further questions for this testifier? Seeing none, we thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next up, we'll have Doug Taylor.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for your time. I do have some quick handouts. If I could have the page circulate these, that would be okay. Okay, thank you. Well, I appreciate your time. My name is Doug Taylor. I'm with the Targi Group. I'm here on behalf of my client, Ed Choice, who was started by Milton Friedman, and educational choice has been his legacy effort for many years. I just want to quickly talk, and you'll see it in the slides there, Mr. Chairman, and those, you can follow along with these slides and what they show, but I'll move through it pretty quickly. I want to explain what's happened nationally in school choice, and then kind of talk to why that's happened and with some specific data from some surveys here in Idaho. Currently, we have about 72 programs nationally with school choice. That includes education savings accounts, voucher programs, tax credit savings accounts, tax credit scholarships, and different forms of tax credits and deductions like the one we're considering today. In 2023, 111 bills were introduced in 40 different states. 7 states enacted brand new programs, 8 states expanded their programs, and 1 in 5 students now live in a state where they have school choice. This year alone in 2024, Alabama recently passed a brand new program. I think just last week, there's proposals in other states like Tennessee and Louisiana for some universal school choice programs. So the question is, why? Why are we seeing such a massive amount of growth in that? And again, I invite you, you can kind of sort through these slides and see some of the data. Parents want it. In September 2023, a large statistically significant survey was conducted of parents talking about these different topics. Some highlights from that. 4 out of 5 Idaho school parents are satisfied with their schools. So that's great. That's a great recognition of where we are in Idaho. But private school parents are the most satisfied. After describing what an education savings account is and the benefits of school choice programs, support increased 36 points from 48% to 84%. You'll see it there. There's a chart where the lines go up. When you tell people what it is, the support grows significantly. But our enrollment patterns in Idaho don't reflect what we actually have. I'll let you look at that, but essentially 85% of our kids are enrolled in traditional public schools. 60% of parents like it. 40% of the parents would like more choices. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that's a quick 2 minutes. I'll leave it there. Look at the slides. It will answer a lot of questions, and I'll stand for any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Are there questions for Mr. Taylor? Representative Roten.
Mr. Chair and Mr. Taylor, you discuss nationwide. I'm from 13 over Nampa, which Nampa hosts 5 private schools and 7 charters, both in district and out of district. Open enrollment is allowed with fewer restrictions, allowing more family choices. Idaho is a national leader in school choice. You can confirm or deny. Where does this provide for a specific increase in choice? I see the ask for the money, which you're saying, well, we'll give them more choices. We're already a leader in school choice. We don't seem to lack in choice. What you're talking about.
Representative, I'm going to cut you off there. I think the question's been asked. Again.
Yeah, do we lack in choice?
Mr. Taylor.
And Mr. Chairman and Representative Roten, no, there's a lot of great things about what Idaho has done. I work a lot in the charter school space. That's something to be celebrated nationally, including what we've done just this year on charter schools. I think all of us will recognize that. And one thing I want to point out in some of the, as you're looking through some of the slides, it shows our parents are pretty happy with our traditional public schools. I'm a proud graduate of Bonneville High School from Idaho Falls. My kids go to West Ada. I like my schools. And like I said, 60% of the people who participated in the survey really like what we have. They're not looking for more. But when given the chance, 40% of parents said, I would like to have those choices. I think Mr. Cargill pointed out today, in his situation, he was looking for something. And there's a lot of families that would like to have those options made available. So this isn't about tailoring something to the masses. This is about making sure that we're not leaving out some families or some kids. And there are, my kids are really well adjusted to the school. They don't have any particular learning disabilities or health issues that would make a traditional public school a challenge. So they do really well at West Ada. But that's not the case for every family. So I really think the focus of this entire debate is ensuring that we're not telling everybody that they have to fit in a certain situation. Like, we don't all wear a size 8 shoe. So we all have different, we're all different. We learn differently, we are different, our situations are economically, they're all different. So this is about making sure that every situation can be accommodated. And yes, we should celebrate the choice we have because it's pretty great. There's nothing wrong with more choice.
Further questions? Seeing none, we thank you for your testimony, Mr. Taylor. Robert Sanchez.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and distinguished members of the committee. I'm Robert Sanchez, Vice President for Idaho Business for Education. This morning, I'm going to be presenting testimony on behalf of our President and CEO, Rod Grammer, who couldn't be here today. It's no overstatement to say that House Bill 447 is one of the most important pieces of legislation in the history of Idaho. It may also be the most important piece of legislation that you'll have the privilege and honor of voting on in your legislative career. That's because House Bill 447 would have a lasting negative impact on our public schools. It would undermine the conservative fiscal stability of our state general fund and would violate the spirit, if not the letter, of Idaho's Constitution. Over time, the legislation would become more and more expensive. It would tie the hands of future lawmakers and make it more difficult for them to fulfill their constitutional mandate to fund free, uniform, and thorough public schools. Unfortunately, most of the money generated by the bill would go to families who have never sent their kids to public schools. This would have the effect of forcing Idaho taxpayers to fund a new and private school system. This is not an opinion. This is what's happened in every state that has passed similar legislation. This bill would be a double assault on our rural schools. They would receive none of these benefits of private schools, but bear the cost of increased property taxes to keep their schools vital. This, too, is not an opinion. This has happened in other states. Those of you who have doubts about this bill, I hope you'll consider the lasting negative impact it will have on our state. I realize the incredible pressure you've been under to support this bill at times. But this is one of those profile encouraged moments that come along occasionally in a legislative career. If you can stand up to the pressure and vote to table this bill, generations of Idaho public school students and taxpayers will thank you for doing the right thing, the courageous thing for our state, its taxpayers and students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Are there questions? Yes, Representative Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sanchez, if we put $50 million more into public education, is that going to undermine our economic stability as a state?
Mr. Sanchez.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Representative Dixon, thank you for the question. I think that's the central question that we ask. What is the return on investment? That measurement is going to be longitudinal. That answer is going to take some time. And we don't have that time. Idaho doesn't have that time. It's taken us 100+ years to get where we're at in positioning our little boys and girls and young men and women for success. What we're asking is that, we've always asked, is that you do the due diligence to be the good stewards, to make the decision that you believe is in the right interest, in the best interest of Idaho students and Idaho families, not just today, but generations to come. We don't have time to take $50 million and invest it with the hope that it's going to be the best investment when all the facts, all the data say otherwise. Hope that answers your question, Representative Dixon.
Thank you. Further questions? Representative Roten.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Sanchez, if we took that $50 million and plowed it right back into our public schools, which is our responsibility, and we've had some good work done this year already on public charters, we put that money back into public schools, would you foresee maybe being able to expand even other options? And would that take away any option of choice for those that are already outside of the public school system or wish to be?
Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Roten, for the question. Another great question. My immediate answer, quick answer, is that putting the money back into public schools is not going to take anything away from choice. You mentioned earlier, Representative Roten, that Idaho has done a tremendous amount of work. Each and every one of you have done incredible work to ensure that our state is postured to be recognized as a leader, an exemplar in the nation for school choice. Probably the most important thing is we, although commit a lion's share of the assets and resources to public education, it's still not enough. Everyone sitting around this table, all the distinguished members of this committee know that it's not enough. Our rural schools, and we're predominantly comprised of rural schools, have tremendous challenges in each and every day, and they do tremendous work given the limited resources and assets that they're provided. I think that additional $50 million, that would be welcomed across our state, particularly by our rural school districts. And I hope that addressed your question, Representative Roden.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Seeing no further red lights, we appreciate your testimony today.
Thank you, Chairman.
Next up, we'll have, and I apologize if I'm reading this wrong, but Matthew Ladner. Correct my pronunciation if needed, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is Matthew Ladner, and I have a handout I'd like to share with the committee, but I'll go ahead and... Okay, but I'll go ahead and describe it in the interest of time. My name is Matthew Ladner. I'm a senior fellow with EdChoice. I'm also a senior advisor with the Heritage Foundation, but I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and I've been involved in the school choice movement in Arizona for the last 21 years. And this handout that I'm going to share with you today, first of all, has data from the Arizona Department of Revenue, which has this table in a report about our 4 different private school choice tax credit programs that we have. Arizona has a great deal of school choice, and our school choice journey began when we were really being crushed by enrollment growth and population growth. And I read this morning that Idaho has a rate of population growth that's twice the national average. So welcome to the club. 2 of these programs were signed into law by Republican governors, and 2 of them were signed into law by Democratic governors. Our journey to school choice started in 1994 with the passage of the largest charter school statute in the country. It's about 22% of all students in Arizona go to charter schools. We have 4 different scholarship tax credit programs, and then later we created the Education Savings Account program. So it was a great deal of school choice. Now, opponents of school choice posit that private school choice will be destructive to public schools, and especially, we are told, in rural areas. So the next chart that you'll see in this handout is actually data from the nation's report card, and it is only for rural students. And what I'm showing you is data from both Arizona in red and Idaho in blue. The good news is that lots of times when I come to other states like this, you see negative numbers. Idaho is doing better than that. So Idaho's numbers are improving. As you can see, Arizona's numbers have improved more. And also, let me note that of the 206 school districts that the state of Arizona had in 1993, the year before the charter school law passed, we still have 206 today. They are all still in operation. The kids are still playing football on Friday nights. They're just performing at a higher level. The next chart in this handout is data that was compiled by the Stanford Educational Opportunity Project. It shows a faster rate of academic growth in rural students in Arizona compared to Idaho. And finally, this last one is data about public school spending. Arizona public school spending is currently at an all-time high. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ladner. Are there questions for Mr. Ladner? Representative Raymond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lautner, what is your definition of a rural school?
That's a good question.
Mr.
There are
Ladner.
actually
Mr.
multiple.
Ladner,
Oh,
through the chair.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
Representative Raymond. There are multiple definitions of what constitutes rural that different federal agencies have and whatnot. So what I've employed here is the definition that used by the nation's report card. But I couldn't tell you exactly what it would be. I can tell you that in Arizona, we have a lot of rural school districts. We have a rural school district with 2 students and 1 teacher. And we also have a Bureau of Indian Affairs school down at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. So we do have a number of rural schools in Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Representative Ehlers.
Thank you, Chairman Cannon and Dr. Ladner. Speaking of rural schools, what kind of outcomes did you see in rural schools based on this school choice that occurred in Arizona?
No,
Ladner?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Ehlers, sorry. The academic outcomes improved, and what I'm showing you here is data. It's all before COVID, and obviously all states took an academic hit during COVID, and it kind of reset the data, and we're going to have to trend that out from here on out. But the bottom line is both the nation's report card and this separate set of Stanford data both show strong improvement, both overall in Arizona in public schools. We couldn't be, having these kind of results without strong public school results, right? Because they are still 70-something% of students in Arizona. So the academic improvement has been there, and the schools are still in operation, obviously.
One more, Mr. Chairman.
A follow-up?
Oh, yeah, one more question.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Chairman Cannon, Dr. Ladner. We're discussing Arizona, and we've heard a lot about the fiscal impact and the effects on the budget. Could you comment about fiscal impact to the Arizona state budget?
Dr. Ladner.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Ehlers, yes. I'm happy to do so. There's been a lot of misinformation about the budget situation in Arizona. The previous budget that passed, usually the rule of thumb in Arizona is that we do about a $200 million carry forward balance from fiscal year to fiscal year. Last session, the legislature passed a budget which was vetoed, and then subsequent negotiations resulted in a budget that spent a lot of money, including maxing out our public school spending, which I have here in my handout, right? This has a much larger impact on the budget situation in Arizona, anything related to school choice. The carry forward balance from last fiscal year to this fiscal year in Arizona was only $10 million. So we did not, we're not, being super conservative in our overall budgeting. The specific school choice claim, the Arizona ESA program is actually a part of the Arizona Department of Education's budget, and the Arizona Department of Education has announced that they have a $28 million surplus. It is not responsible for the overall budget trends in Arizona.
Further questions? Yes, Representative Boyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Doctor, for being here. Does Arizona have a Blaine Amendment? And if so, how did you get around that?
Dr. Ladner.
Chairman Cameron, Representative Boyle, yes. We do have a Blaine Amendment. And our Blaine Amendment is worded in such a way that says that it is impermissible to give aid either to private or religious schools. We actually had a voucher program that was struck down in about 2006, but subsequently the Arizona Legislature passed the ESA program, and the constitutional distinction there is that the money goes into an account and all of that money is directed by parents, and they have uses for the program that is other than going to private schools. So in Arizona right now, vouchers are actually unconstitutional. Tax credits and ESAs are constitutional.
Seeing no further lights, we appreciate your testimony today. Thank you, Dr. Ladner.
Thank you.
Next up, we'll hear from Marcia Bravo. Marcia.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. My name is Marcia Bravo, and I'm an Idaho native, and I'm also a retired educator who had the privilege of teaching in Idaho public schools for more than 40 years. But be that as it may, I greatly oppose House Bill 447. As a citizen, I have great respect and honor for our state laws. Yet my purpose today is to reference the Idaho Constitution, which I know as state leaders you all took an oath to support and defend. The Idaho Constitution is not a document of convenience. It is clearly the law of our land. Allow me to reference it. Article 9, Section 1 of the Constitution of the State of Idaho is clear. Legislature to establish system of free schools. The stability of a Republican form of government depending mainly upon the intelligence of the people. It shall be the duty of the Legislature of Idaho to establish and maintain a general, uniform, and thorough system of public, free, common schools. Now, we know through the years there is a chronic funding gap. So my question to you is, how can this bill make the education system of Idaho for public education better? Let's do the math. If you subtract money from the general fund, there is less money that can be used toward Idaho schools and the education of Idaho children. We can do better. I plead and urge you to veto this bill. It is harmful to children, it is harmful to students of all ages, and the public education of our system, our great state of Idaho. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bravo. Ms. Bravo. Are there questions at this time? Seeing none, we appreciate your testimony very much.
Thank you.
Christian Welp.
Good morning. My name is Christian Welp, and I represent the Catholic Diocese in the state of Idaho. Mr. Chairman, I ask permission to read a testimony from a mother that
Please,
I know
go ahead.
she's not able to be here. Single mother, works 2 jobs, and has her daughter in a public school and not able to be here this morning. Dear committee members, my name is Juliet Gutierrez, and my child currently attends a junior high school here in Boise. We moved here from northern Idaho in the winter of 2018 and had to transition from a private school to a public school. This was an adjustment for her. She acclimated. In the years since, there have been several issues at the junior high. My child is a very bright student and loved going to school and had many friends. Since the suicide of the school counselor that took place last year, she was very devastated and missed the last 2 weeks of the first half of the school year due to her anxiety, and she became very depressed. Then the following spring, she witnessed one of her track coaches being arrested. These situations have caused her to become very closed off, and her behavior has changed dramatically. I know she needs psychological help, but she is so against it. She feels like she can trust no one. She refuses to speak about it. She used to be so vibrant and laughed a lot. I have strong faith that kids will strive in a private school setting. With this, I deeply encourage that the Idaho Parental Choice Tax Credit Bill pass, because it would be a lifeline for my family and many other families. Thank you and God bless you, Juliet Gutierrez. I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Welp. Are there questions at this time? Seeing none, I appreciate your testimony. Thanks for coming in today. We'll next hear from Quinn Perry.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. For the record, my name is Quinn Perry, and I'm the Deputy Director for the Idaho School Boards Association, here today with strong opposition against House Bill 447. House Bill 447 violates a core principle held by this body of fiscal responsibility and conservatism. We can look no further than to even some of our neighboring states who have passed similar programs just like this one. Every ESA, tax credit, or voucher-like program have ballooned into multi-million-dollar programs handed out without accountability or transparency that is modeled like our public schools. In our neighboring state of Utah, they enacted their first voucher system last year with a price tag initially of $42 million. Before there has even been $1 spent on the program, the Utah Appropriations Committee received language recently that it's now asking for an additional $150 million for their private school program due to the unanticipated high demand from families who were already enrolled in private school. Arizona started at $36 million, but it is still nearing a nearly $950 million investment this year. Other states, Illinois, Ohio, Wisconsin, and Florida all have similar stories. You can look to these states and see what they have learned and the financial burden placed upon policymakers to continue to grow spending on a now third system of publicly funded schools, just one without any of the accountability or transparency demanded by our public schools. This legislation has an automatic review clause in 2026 to see if it's meeting the fiscal demand, and we don't think that this will be indifferent than any other state. The numbers will be astonishing, and we'll ask that you keep these funds in our public school system. I just want to close by saying one thing. All of these, it is an issue of semantics if it's an ESA, a tax credit, or a voucher, but they all have two very similar issues. One is that an overwhelming majority are already used by students who are enrolled in private school, and two, the schools get to choose their students. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you. Questions at this time? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Perry. Next, we'll hear from Tammy Emmerich.
Good morning. My name is Tammy Emmerich. I'm the Superintendent of Catholic Schools for the Diocese of Boise. Dear members of the Tax and Revenue Committee, thank you for allowing me to come and speak to you this morning. I am asking you to support the Idaho Parental Tax Credit. The reality for families is that public school is not the perfect fit for every child. In our state, we serve 3,984 students in our Idaho Catholic schools. 10 of our 14 schools qualify for Title I services, and that is based on financial need. The cost to educate in schools, in our Idaho Catholic schools, is about half of the cost to educate in public schools. And our students' average percentile on our standardized tests. Yes, we take standardized tests, and we are accountable, and I hold my schools accountable to that. The percentile in our standardized test in math is 25 to 40% higher than public schools. And our lowest percentile in our reading is at the 70th percentile. It's also been mentioned that we get to choose our students. Anywhere between 10 and 20% of our populations at each of our schools, our students are on accommodation plans, which would be the equivalent to a 504 or an IEP. So I want to make sure that people understand that we do serve students because they want a Catholic education. And if the families want that, we make sure that we have those accommodations for those students. Many of our parents are making huge financial sacrifices to send their children to a school that aligns with their values. And I think that's what this parental choice is all about, is that parental choice where they can choose the education that aligns with their family values. Many parents are looking for opportunities to choose that learning environment, and this parental choice credit would help them in that, to pursue that for their own families. We need the Idaho Parental Choice Tax Credit to pass so we can continue to ensure that our children are receiving the life-changing education they deserve. Please vote yes on the Idaho Parental Tax Credit legislation. I stand for questions.
Thank you, Tammy. Are there questions? Representative Roten.
Mr. Chairman and good lady, I have newsletters from the Diocesan News, pronunciation, which says the diocese, with support of the bishop, had been very involved in this legislation. And St. Joseph's said that the non-interference clause is very strong in this bill, and ensuring that acceptance of the tax refund in no way entangles or obligates families to state mandates. This is truly a no-strings-attached initiative. Is that how the diocese sees this?
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Point of order, Representative Monks.
Thank you. Chairman, questions are meant to ask and obtain information, not to provide information, and I feel like these questions are providing information as opposed to trying to obtain information.
Let's ask questions that are aimed at obtaining information. Representative Roten, can you restate that question, or?
Well, the question is, do you see this as a no-strings-attached option?
Thank you.
The way the House bill is written.
Tammy, if you'll speak to the chair.
Oh, yes, excuse me.
Ms. Emmerich, go ahead.
Excuse me. The way the House Bill 447 is written is there are no strings attached. What I was trying to convey to all of you is that we do have accountability in our schools, and we do make sure that our students are learning and growing. The fact that the House bill is written as it is, with no direct strings attached as far as standardized testing and those type of things, that is true.
Thank you. Further questions? Yes, Representative Boyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. Can you repeat your reading proficiency?
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Ms. Emmerich, go ahead.
So our lowest percentile in reading in any grade is at the 70th percentile.
Further questions? Yes, Representative Durant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question. You said that there's 10 schools that you're over, correct?
Excuse me?
That you have 10 schools.
We have 14 schools in the diocese. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm not familiar, so just kind of an understanding. What's your school size? What's your classroom size?
Ms. Emmerich, go ahead.
So we range anywhere from 82 students to Bishop Kelly, which is about 960 this year. And we have one private high school, Bishop Kelly, Catholic high school, and the majority of our schools are K through 8 schools.
Thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none, we appreciate your testimony today. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
We'll next hear from Judy Halverson, please.
Good morning. Mr. Chair, members of the House of the Revenue Tax Committee, my name is Judy Halverson. I live in Boise, District 17. I'm speaking to you on behalf of the Oregon-Idaho Conference of United Women in Faith, formerly known as United Methodist Women. We are in opposition to this House Bill 447, having strong conviction of supporting public education, believing in the separation of the church and state, and believing that there should never be discrimination on the basis of a student's background or personal characteristics, including religion, race, national origin, disability, and LGBTQ plus status. This parent tax credit will have the state of Idaho more involved in private schooling. If parents want to send their child to a private or religious school, that's great. That's their choice. But that's their choice not to use the public schools that are available to all students. There's a very real harmful potential of decreasing funds available for public education. Studies by the Idaho Center for Fiscal Policy has estimated that the potential annual cost to Idaho taxpayers from this bill could be up to $170 million in 2026 and beyond. What happens when there isn't enough tax revenue coming in to pay for both kinds of tax, like the tax credit for the parents for private schools, and then the funding for public schools? I've lived in Idaho since 1986, and I do remember when the public education was cut, funds were cut. So what happens when the funding for public education is in danger? Well, I have a grandson. He's adorable. And in 2027, he'll go to Mountain View Elementary School. And I'm hoping and praying that he will have a wonderful education there. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for Ms. Halverson? Seeing none, we certainly appreciate you coming in and testifying today. Next up is Jody Richel. I'm probably mispronouncing that. I apologize. Introduce yourself and set me straight. The time is yours.
No one pronounces it right. My name is Jody Ryle from Meridian, Idaho. I am a lobbyist with the Targhee Group, where for the last 2 legislative sessions, I have worked on supporting school choice legislation, including supporting charter schools, education savings account, and the bill before you today, H447. However, today, I stand here to tell you my story as a parent. My oldest started school in Idaho 20 years ago, and my youngest graduated in 2021. In trying to find the best fit for my children, I used every type of school choice that existed in Idaho at the time. I used private school, homeschool, a magnet school, which is part of the traditional public school system, and a charter school. And those were all the school choice options available then. The reason I used every option, and this is what is most important to remember, is that each of my children was different. They each had different needs, and their situations changed year by year. I wanted to tailor their education experience to be the best fit for them. 20 years later, those still are largely the only school choice options available to parents in Idaho. We do have more charter schools, which is fantastic if you don't end up on a waiting list. We have expanded open enrollment, but just because you are allowed to attend any school doesn't mean you actually can. And many parents might still need help to take advantage of the resources that we currently have. I am grateful to have had those options, but I would have appreciated even more. With school choice rapidly expanding across the country, I would like to see Idaho parents have access to more choice, such as private tutors or specialists, micro schools, and learning pods. These are starting to appear in our state, but they are not very common and still perhaps not financially accessible to many parents. I support H447 because I believe it will help more parents better help their children reach their potential, and it will also encourage the growth of school options like micro schools, as well as spur innovation in educational solutions that could better help all Idaho students reach their potential. No one was more invested in my children's educational success than I was as a mother, and I want to see more families have access to resources for school choice throughout Idaho. So I would ask you to send H447 to the full House with your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for Ms. Riel at this time? Seeing none, thank you so much. We will next hear from Chris Perry, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Chris Perry, and I represent the members of the Idaho Education Association. So educators, along with every major public education stakeholder in the state, oppose House Bill 447. Last October, IEA commissioned a poll of over 2,300 Idahoans, and the most striking results, other than resounding support, as you heard when I testified on that bill, for safe, modern, secure school facilities, was the response to this question that we pose. Do you support or oppose requiring any private or religious school that receives tax dollars to be held to the same transparency and accountability standards as public schools? 80% of Idahoans responded that they support that level of accountability in any voucher scheme being considered, be it an ESA or a tax credit. The same transparency and accountability standards as public schools. Even Idahoans who like the idea of vouchers agreed with that. So does House Bill 447 meet that level of accountability for the private, religious, and for-profit schools that would benefit most from this legislation? The answer is clearly no. More broadly, no voucher bill passed anywhere in the country has met that level of accountability or transparency. The lack of accountability prevents taxpayers from having any insight or assurance that their tax dollars are actually being used to provide a quality education to Idaho kids. The lack of transparency prevents parents from having any insight into how their child might be treated in a private school that can freely discriminate for any number of reasons, including disability, religion, or class, raise their tuition for any reason, as we've seen in Arizona, and teach any curriculum they like without oversight. On behalf of the IEA, our thousands of educator members across the state, and 80% of your fellow Idahoans, please vote against HB 447. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Are there questions? Seeing none, we thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next, Patrick Graff, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Patrick Graff. I'm the Director of Legislative Policy with the American Federation for Children. I testify in support of House Bill 447. You will hear from a number of supporters today that the Idaho Parental Choice Tax Credit will give their families life-changing access to a school that best fits their child's needs. However, that is not what I am here to speak to today. Instead, I argue if you care about improving the public school system, you should support this bill. Recent evidence published this past November by Professor David Figlio and co-authors found that the creation and maturation of the Private School Choice Scholarship Program in Florida improved public school student test scores by 5 percentile points over 10 years. A series of now 30 papers have answered this question. How does the competition created by private school choice programs affect public school students? 27 of these studies have found positive effects. Opponents of this bill have argued today that this $50 million is better spent in the public school system. A recent meta-analysis of research on the effects of increasing public school spending was recently published this January by Professor Carabo Jackson and co-authors. They found that by spending $1,000 more per pupil per year, student test score growth only increased by 1 percentile point after 4 years. So if allocated well, new spending can work, albeit at a substantial cost for modest improvements. So join me in a thought experiment. If an additional $50 million per year were given to the public school system, what test score gains could we reasonably expect? This translates to about $160 per pupil per year in Idaho. After 10 years, this additional funding would improve public test scores in Idaho by less than half of a percentile point over 10 years. In contrast, over that same period, we could expect that the Idaho Parental Choice Tax Credit would lead to a 5 percentile point increase for public school students in schools facing competitive pressure to improve. In other words, the increased public school budget approach would require over 10 times more funding, over $5 billion over 10 years to achieve similar results. All of Idaho's students deserve education freedom. I ask for your support of them with this bill. And Chairman, I stand for any questions.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony. Any questions? At this time, Representative Roten.
Mr. Chair and Patrick, I got your first name. I didn't get the second, sorry. So you've got... Anyway, and we've heard different testimony. So do you believe then that if we give public funds to these private schools, that they should be treated as public schools? Or do you think that we should maybe have less oversight in the public school, because it seems that seems to have a correlation?
Mr. Graff.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Roden. Yeah, thank you for the question. So I'm from the state of Indiana. We've had a voucher program now for nearly 15 years that's expanded over that time. And in contrast to a voucher program, this parental choice tax credit is dollars given to parents to spend on the educational option that works best for them. So that can be used for micro schools, that can be used for learning pods. In this bill, the accountability goes to the parents. So parents are the ones in the driver's seat. If they're sending their kids to a private school, they will have accountability through the test scores that they will receive from those schools. And it will be tests aligned to the curricula and the things that they would like to learn at that school that might not cohere with the Idaho state test, right? So they have a different set of curriculum that they're teaching to, and so that might be different than the Idaho state test. So I do believe there's accountability within this program as well.
Thank you. Seeing no further red lights, thank you for coming in and testifying.
If I could, please, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Raymond, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Graff, where did you say you live? Which state?
Yes, I'm from South Bend, Indiana.
Indiana. Okay, thank you.
That's right.
And American Federation from Children is from what state?
So our headquarters in Dallas, Texas.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next, let's hear from Zachary Borman, please.
Thank you, Chairman Cannon and representatives. My name is Zach Borman. I'm the president of the West Data Education Association, and our members oppose H447. Last year, all 5 of West Data's fiscally conservative trustees signed off on running a $500 million plant facilities levy, a historic ask in the state of Idaho. They saw the writing on the wall in regards to regional growth, ongoing needs for updating facilities, and the growing call for more choice from our district's parents. Honestly, that $500 million was more than likely a huge under-ask of what was really needed. As I'm sure you know, the levy failed pretty miserably, not because residents didn't agree with the need, but because they are tired of having to disproportionately foot the bill for the Idaho Legislature's constitutional responsibilities. For the good sponsor or others to state that this money does not come from school funds seems disingenuous. Perhaps it is not the amount currently allocated for public schools, but that fund currently is inadequate for the need, and the money, if passed, would not be allocated for public schools. I continue to be somewhat astonished that we would be considering dropping all this extra money into a whole new educational system when we're regularly not meeting the existent need of our established ones. Similar to using the limited remainder of your monthly earnings to buy a ticket to Disneyland for your high school sweethearts kids instead of buying your much needed winter clothes for your own. It is to disregard the clear needs of your immediate obligatory dependents in order to partially fulfill a frivolous request from those not your responsibility. You all can pat yourself on the back and feel like public education has been taken care of because there were historic investments over the last few years, and while there have been some great steps, it has not come even close to keeping up with need or inflation. Idaho Ed News reports that Idaho teachers earn 8.5% less than the national average, and when adjusted for inflation, the average salary of a classroom teacher declined by an estimated 6.4% over the last decade. The other issue is special education. While you all consider giving $40 million to subsidize parental choice, you overlook that in 21-22, the funding gap for special education sat at an estimated $66.5 million, taking into federal and state appropriations.
You'll need to wrap up, Mr. Borman.
Okay. These folks elect to go a route of their choice for a variety of reasons, and there are benefits to that choice, but it also has a cost. Let them shoulder the burden. We ask that you fulfill your existing obligation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Borman at this time? Seeing none, we appreciate your time and your testimony today. Let's hear next from Robbie Hart.
Hi. Thank you for
this time. My name's Robbie Hart from Emmett, Idaho. Small town, in case none of you know where it is. Seems like everybody knows what rural people think. Maybe some of you should think about asking us. I'm real tired of watching the news and hearing about that. I'm rural. I drive from Emmett, Idaho to Greenleaf, Idaho to give my kids the education that I believe they need. I drive hundreds of miles every month, and I'm really kind of sad to hear some of the comments here. I personally believe that Idaho parents should be able to hold schools accountable. My kids go to Greenleaf, Idaho, started in 1908. Some of you, I'm pretty sure all of you, weren't around during the Depression. They survived that. Some of the things that they've accomplished are unbelievable. My kids have been so blessed and saturated in history of Idaho by going there. And I can tell you as a parent, I'm more than capable to hold them accountable. And I'm very disappointed for somebody to question Idaho parents. But I appreciate you guys have a tough job. And these two ladies are heroes. I'm nobody. And there's a whole bunch of us that are nobodies. But finally, somebody stood up for us. But thank you again for your time, and I apologize for my emotions. But us simple people here in Idaho, we're tired of hearing everybody tell us what we think. I would ask you all to stop taking the guided tour and get out there in the highways and the byways and see what we think. 85% of us are red. Of that 85%, most are Christians. Remember what state you're in and remember what Idaho's about. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for the testimony. I'll remind the audience that we need to have a level of decorum in here, please. So if you can keep the outbursts down, that would be appreciated. Thank you, Robbie. Are there questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next testifier. Bonnie Schuster, please.
Excuse me, I submitted written testimony, so I did not intend to testify in person.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll have Carly Fraley, please.
Honorable committee members and chairman, my name is Carly Fraley, and I have 5 children currently attending Nampa Christian. We moved to Idaho with 3 children and found a great Christian school that met the physical, emotional, and spiritual needs of our children. 2 years later, we adopted 11-and-a-half-year-old twin girls from Haiti. These girls had little education, not knowing how to read or write in their own language. One of our girls has special needs, which comes with its own challenges and extra costs. The Boise School District went to online learning. Can you imagine what this would look like for our 2 girls barely speaking English with little education and working parents? Thankfully, the Christian school where our children went offered to take them into their special assistance program. This was a flourishing time, but they eventually had to move back to the public school, which offered more services. The first few months were a struggle, trying to get the girls the help they needed. We felt like no one was listening to us about our children. In this process, we felt like the girls lost valuable learning time. Meanwhile, our youngest child was starting to struggle in the classroom setting. We received a diagnosis of ADD, ADHD, and oppositional defiant disorder, and battled through her feelings of defeat in not being able to meet the school's expectations. Because of this, we pulled her out of school and started homeschooling for 1.5 years, and it went great for her. Due to a bullying situation with our son, we were led to a school change for all 5 kids, but also a move to Nampa. Unfortunately, the twins moving to our local public middle school was far worse than we had faced up to this point. The environment was not conducive to learning. My children were cursed at, called the N-word, and were altogether dismissed by certain staff members when they asked for help. Safety was also a huge concern. There was an open door policy on campus where anyone could walk through the front doors. During their 1 semester there, they were there were 2 lockdowns on campus. Again, the school where our 3 children were attending was willing to work with us to create a program to meet their needs. They have teachers who care deeply for the personhood of our children. We no longer must worry that our children are going to be taught something contrary to our belief system. Having them all in a Christian environment, we are watching them learn, grow, and become better people. However, the struggle comes with paying for education for 5 children, 2 of them costing even more due to extra help that they require. The tax credit would be a tremendous blessing to our family as we continue to sacrifice and try to make the best choices for our children, because no 2 children are alike. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions at this time? Seeing none, we certainly appreciate your testimony today. April Frederick.
Good morning, I'm April Frederick from Boise. I'm a product of strong public schools. I'm not a parent or a grandparent, I'm a taxpayer. When I was a child and I didn't like what was offered for dinner, I didn't ask my parents for money to go out to dinner. I was told I could spend my own money on that. This is what school vouchers sound like to me. If you don't like what's for dinner, I'm not going to pay for your evening out. Also, as a property owner, I think I pay roughly $500 a year for public schools. Let's do the math here. If I were a parent choosing to send my children to a private school, as a taxpayer, I'd pay in $500 and I'd get back $5,000 per child. That doesn't really sound like good math here. What a tremendous return on an investment that I don't think I could even get in the stock market. So I believe in Idaho children that they deserve the same opportunities I had for a quality education. Let's not give out a handout to a small number of families who can already afford private schools. Let's not decrease our already strapped education budgets, especially in rural Idaho, and who cannot afford more levies. Thank you.
Thank you, April. Are there questions for April at this time? Seeing none, we appreciate your testimony. We are not going to get to all the testifiers who signed up today. We appreciate everyone who's signed up and who has testified. I will take one more testifier, and then we're going to move into the discussion and debate section of our hearing. We'll call to testify Matt Crane, please.
All right, good morning, members of the committee. My name is Matt Crane, and I am very grateful to you for considering this Idaho Parental Tax Choice Credit Bill. I currently have 4 kids enrolled in Nampa Christian School, and sometimes there's a mentality that only rich people send their kids to private school, but I can certainly testify before you that I am not part of that stereotype. My wife and I sacrifice greatly to be able to send 4 kids to private school, and we do this because we feel that this is certainly best for them. We appreciate the type of education that they get at Nampa Christian. I will say that, as we all know, things are getting more expensive in every sector of our economy, and things are getting more and more difficult to afford. And even though we have the choice to send our kids to private school, with the trajectory of the economy, I'm not going to have a choice for much longer. And that's why I really appreciate the prospect of some of the tax money that I'm already spending being able to come back towards me as a credit. One of the speakers mentioned that he would be paying taxes that he would not personally benefit from, or his children in public school would not benefit from. That's already my condition. I'm already paying taxes that the public school benefits from, but I don't receive any reciprocal benefit from. So I appreciate the
possibility of this parental tax choice credit bill, and I ask that you please consider this and vote yes on this tax credit bill.
Thank you. Are there questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony today. We're going to invite Representative Horman back to the podium to close. And Representative, one thing I'd like you to address in your closing is the constitutional issue that has been raised, and address the constitutionality of this legislation, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to do that. We are long past the days of the Little Red New Testament being handed out in 5th grade. That doesn't happen anymore. These tax credits are to parents, not religions, and not even to schools. Espinoza versus Montana made clear that a state need not offer choice options to private religiously owned institutions. But if they do, and Idaho does, we cannot discriminate on the basis of religion. This bill does not do that. There are attorneys here that are much more qualified to answer that question than I, but that's the short answer. We don't all wear a size 8 shoe, and I agree, this is one of the most important bills, maybe not in history, because this is an expansion of something we already do, but I agree. You have heard from the parents, and I just met a new one sitting here who was dismayed to learn that you had to sign up in advance to testify. She didn't realize that. She was here to speak on behalf of her children, Nolan, Joss, and Shia, and asks that you please not leave them out when it comes to having a dinner that works for them. Please do not leave them hungry. I'm not going to address the rural options. You've heard parents address that better than anything I could say. The bill is capped at $50 million. No one can change that except you. If you change that number, it will go up, it might go down. But only you, as a legislature, can change that. The grocery tax credit does not make the state involved at all in my grocery shopping. Inflation has, but not the tax credit. Mr. Chairman, Mountain States Policy Center estimates there are about 17,000 private school students and approximately 33,000 homeschool students. That state, if you times that times 9,000, which is a rough estimate of what the state invests per student, that's about $450 million that the state is not paying for these students. This bill asks for a small fraction of that for these families who you have heard do not fit the typical stereotype of a private school parent. You have heard that today firsthand. They make tremendous sacrifices to place their children where they think they can learn best. Brown v. Board said race cannot be the deciding factor for school attendance. An address shouldn't be either. One of the loudest arguments against school choice is that it creates segregation. Let me tell you what, we already face that. The problem with that argument is too often our neighborhoods are already divided along racial and economic lines. Students pay a price for that because their parents can't afford the mortgage or the rent in the neighborhood where the great school is. All schools try, they do. I've been there, they try. But the problem is you shouldn't have to live on the right side of State Street to get in school where your child has a fighting chance, maybe a 70% chance at learning to read at grade level. It shouldn't be connected to your zip code. And this bill gives us a fighting chance at disconnecting income and wealth and housing from academic achievement because parents are willing to fight for their children to get them to a place where they might have a shot if their situation is not working. I agree. I don't think it will be that many kids. But for those who need it, it is life-changing. Are Idaho's children only the ones in our public schools? Not for me. Every one of them deserves a chance for an excellent education. It's why I ran. It's why I stand here now. I feel a moral obligation to care about every child's learning. Every one. That's a bar even higher than our sacred constitutional obligation, which we are striving to meet. We have invested billions in the time I have been serving. The average teacher salary now is over $61,000. That beats what you can make at a community college or even LC sometimes. We have invested billions in our public system, and I ask that you support this bill that invests a small fraction of what we invest for the kids in the public system, for the other families who are making tremendous sacrifices to get their kids where they feel they have the best chance at learning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee.
Thank you. Committee, House Bill 447 is before the committee. Representative Pickett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for a motion, and if I could comment.
A motion is in order. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we send House Bill 447 to the floor with a due pass recommendation. And if I may comment, please.
Yes, you may speak to the motion. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the testimony today, and I definitely appreciate the sponsors and their work in this important bill, one of the most important bills that we'll see this session. And I want to just say that coming from a very rural area, one of the most rural areas in the state, I appreciate the opportunity that this provides to give options to parents. We are going to see that we have seen and we continue to see that parents demand an increasing role in their kids' education, and this is well defined. It provides transparency, it provides accountability, it is capped. It is something that we can trust in and move forward with confidence and hope to see great results, as has been testified to here today. And so with that comment, I would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Pickett. Committee, there's a motion before us. Representative Mickelson.
For an alternate motion, Mr. Chairman.
An alternate motion or a substitute motion is in order. Go ahead, Representative.
I move to hold House Bill 447 in committee indefinitely.
Okay, committee, we have a motion. We have a
Chair.
substitute motion to hold House Bill 447 in committee.
Chair.
Yes, Representative Ehlers, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. For an amended substitute motion,
An amended substitute motion is in order. Go ahead.
I move that we send 447 to the floor without recommendation.
Would you like to speak to that or not?
Not yet.
Okay. Committee, we have before us an amended substitute motion to send House Bill 447 to the floor without recommendation. Is there debate on that motion? Yes, Representative Boyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Without recommendation would give everyone the ability to just go with their own, whatever they feel inside. You know, I am very much in support of this bill, especially after listening to these parents. The gentleman who drives all the way from Emmett to Greenleaf. Now just imagine the sacrifice that is. It is incredible. I took my own kids 10 miles up the road to a little school, and that was a huge sacrifice for me. Much less clear that far. That is amazing. And any school with 70% as the lowest proficiency in reading, That is amazing. That is real competition. I don't understand the problem with competition in education. All these arguments I have heard for years against charter schools from the exact same people. Parents are also taxpayers. We need to remember that. They are putting a lot of money out for sacrifices for their kids. This is about a tax credit. Have we had the same arguments about any tax credit that everyone here takes on their taxes? This is a tax credit. So please think about that. And I would support the amended substitute.
Thank you. Further debate, Representative Necochea.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm grateful for everyone who came out to testify today. I would jump at the opportunity to invest $50 million in new services that we're going to expand access for our kids to learn. Half of our kids show up at kindergarten already behind the curve because we don't put any money into kindergarten preparedness. We are seeing promising results in the money that the state has put into expanding all-day kindergarten, and literacy test scores are increasing where school districts have been able to do that. I'd love to be able to make that happen in every district and every school. I could go on and on about what we could do with $50 million for kids, child abuse prevention, access to health care, et cetera. Unfortunately, this bill does not expand any access to services. Kids have access to K through 12 today. With this bill, they would have access to K through 12. We're just replacing private dollars with public dollars by doing this subsidy. And private schools are already advertising this. They're already touting this as a great way to, just cut your tuition cost for current students. And these vouchers aren't, set aside for low-income kids who don't have access today. They're going to go out to the people who are first in line, the people who have the accountants, who can navigate them, their tax return easily and be in the first in line to get these limited subsidies. And so that's very concerning to me that these are just public dollars replacing private dollars. And so there's no return on our investment. And that's what's so fiscally irresponsible about this bill to me. Not to mention that then there's zero accountability. We're going to spend tax dollars, just send them out the door and not know what kind of schools, what kind of services these kids are going to get. Whether are they going to get the rigorous math, science, and reading curricula that we know our kids need, or are they going to get something else completely? And so I will be opposing the amended substitute motion. We have a responsibility as a committee to not let harmful legislation out of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. No more outbursts, please, from the crowd. Appreciate that. Thank you, Representative Necochea. Representative Weber, further debate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to address just the economic impact. Several of us attended earlier in the session an economic outlook, and a couple of our members that serve on JFAC were there. In fact, they're on the panel. And I heard words like economic cliff approaching, that they are concerned, or they advise caution as we set our budget session. With that, and then earlier in the session, we passed House Bill 521. You look at that, I was 61 members of the House that voted in favor of this bill. That bill reduces tax income $60 million. It increases spending of $150 million. Now, when you think about what I just said of an economic cliff and being fiscally responsible, that bill alone that reduces income but increases spending, and then we're approaching a new program that would spend $50 million, that to me is not being fiscally responsible. For that reason alone, I'll be supporting the substitute motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Weber. Representative Ehlers.
Thank you, Chairman Cannon. Compose my thoughts now to speak to this amended substitute motion. I think it's important in school choice that we have strong schools and good alternatives. We need strong schools for school choice to work. Otherwise, you have no choice. And so I think it's possible to do both. And when I consider this, I think about what's best for the students. Schools exist to serve students. And I want to see what's done best for the students. That I'm a supporter of strong public schools. That works for so many people. And for the students that don't, let's give them an alternative. And I think this bill does this in a fiscally responsible way. Some of the other presenters talked about the growth in the budgets. And to me, we have something here that limits it, which I think is wise, where we've capped it at 50 million, and we have a process in place to reevaluate it. Further, I think some of that growth just shows that this is what parents want. I think it's showing increased demand, and I really like the small provision in this bill on page 3, line about 26, where the tax commission, line 20, is going to keep a record of who applies or how many apply in excess of this amount. So the legislature can then use that information in a decision to see what the people think about this. I also made the motion to go with a no recommendation because, as we can see, this is a hot topic, a contentious topic. I'd like to just get it to the floor to let the rest of our colleagues have a chance to weigh in on this, regardless of how you might feel here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Roden.
Mr. Chair, with regard to motion, we already talked, and even people that were in favor of this recognize that Idaho is one of the top in the nation with regard to school choice. Now, two things can happen. You've got this money coming out and going to private schools, homeschoolers, and you may say, well, that's only going to, maybe it's just going to the folks that are already outside of the school districts, which we've heard. We've heard 80% of these funds would go to people that are already outside of the public school districts. But the ones that take kids out of the school districts, remember, we've had this argument, enrollment versus ADA, and we're still funding on ADA. When we have a reduction in our average daily attendance, we have a reduction in units funding. So, which one? Which one's happening? Or are we going to get double whammied? Are we going to send taxpayer dollars out, as well as then, on the backside, get hit with a lower ADA and lower public school fundings? It's strict. That's where we're at. And by their numbers, they're saying 20% could come out of the public schools. So we've got choice. Rural, you've got, some of our members are in really rural areas. Emmett to Greenleaf, that's a hump, but some of them just don't even have private schools. Some of them don't have that ability, and what you would find then as public dollars, rural areas subsidizing Nampa, my district. We've got a number of public schools. Ada County has a number of public schools. Some of these rural districts it's not even available. And as far as moral versus common moral obligation, we have a constitutional obligation to have a common school where we accept everybody. To me, that seems like a pretty fulfilling moral obligation. We're doing the best we can, but we take them all. So, to me, you got a chance of a double dip on funding. We already have a system where we take everybody, but we already have nationally recognized school choice. And this to me just seems like it will be the camel's nose under the tent. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative Roten. Representative Durant, please.
To speak on the motion.
Yes, you have the floor.
So when I've looked at this, I've looked at it in a different way. Instead of just parent choice, looked at it as a way of funding, basically being able to fund the choice. And so talking to a bunch of my different constituents and different people, one of the biggest struggles with the way that this bill is currently written is it comes off as parent choice, but that's really only the 10 million. The 10 million is the part that's for those that aren't able to be in there now. And so there's such a big concern with the way it's written is if you're not able to get in that part of that 10 million, they can't afford, like many here have said, it's been a real struggle, but many have not been able to afford even being able to start. And so as I've really struggled and tried to toy with what would be best in that, a lot of people have just said, for my constituents, that they do not like the way it is written because it does not give as much to parents to do that free choice, being as a tax credit. And there's a lot of heartburn with the way the tax credit that I've had from people on both sides of the spectrum. And the biggest one is there's the concern of funding as a tax credit, and then how do you really get the transparency? We have the tax commission, but not everybody can openly go and see that. And so I will not support the assisted substitute motion because for the fact that so many people have reached out that they don't like it, the form of a tax credit. And if this is a route that we want to go down in this state, yes, it's capped now, but the amount of people here that said that it's going to be a good for them, it's going to be for others, it's going to need to grow to reach the needs. And so we got to make sure what we do is correct and that it's going to be a long-term sustainable if this is what we want. And from reaching out to people, I don't feel the way that it currently is going to give us the long sustainability and the actions that we want. It's a really good intention, but I'm afraid if we put it in, then the full intentions of the sponsor and the full, basically the full, in my opinion, what they really want, this doesn't fully get what they want in. And it could tie hands if we do decide that that is how we want. We need to make sure it's correct the first time.
Thank you. Representative Burns.
Thank you, Chairman Cannon. I will be supporting the substitute motion to hold the bill in committee. I think that I've got a couple of concerns with it. First of all, at this point in the year, I am not sure that we've got an extra $50 million laying around that we can afford to put into this program. We have spent a prolific amount of money this year, and I don't know where we are going to find this $50 million this year. I don't know where we're going to find the $50 million next year. I think another pretty serious concern is the fact that we would be creating what, to the best of my research, would be a first-come, first-served tax credit. There are roughly 40,000 private and homeschooled kids throughout the state. If we times 40,000 by 5,000, that's $200 million. That is nowhere near the amount, the $50 million. We would only be, basically giving a tax credit to about 25% of those kids. And there's going to be 75% of the kids that are still left unreceiving of this program. I don't think that it's wise that we are saying, okay, first come, first serve. If you want to do something that is uniform and is there for all. I mean, potentially we could have done it a year ago or the year before when we had so much surplus. This year is not the year to do it, so I will be supporting the substitute motion.
Thank you, Representative Burns. Representative Raymond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know we're short of time. I'll be very brief. I know that this is a very emotional issue. I get that. And every one of us have our story. I have my own story for my own family. I'll not share it today because of time, but I will tell you that this bill gives, I think we need to separate policy from emotion and that decision. some of the testimony that we've heard today gives me pause. For example, that the voucher system is unconstitutional, so the way we work around that is give money directly to the families. That gives me pause. The other thing that gives me pause is the fact that this money either never makes it to the general fund or it gets deducted from the general fund depending on whether you paid taxes in or whether you're taking the credit back after you've paid your taxes. We've all been here long enough to know that recessions are real. And the last recession that we went through, every state agency was scrambling under every rock to find a dollar. Under this bill, in a recession, it's a very real possibility public education will suffer, but the tax credit will go on without adjustment. And that gives me pause as well. So I will be supporting the substitute motion. Thank you.
Committee, is there further debate on the motions? Representative Cheatham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be also supporting the substitute motion. Prior to the session starting, we had meetings with the school districts in our area, and they still have a lot of needs. Even with what we've done this year, as Representative Weber mentioned with House Bill 521, every school district in the state that I've heard from is still very short on counselors. We can't give the support to the students that we have in the public education system. School District 25 now has 47% of all the special needs students in Southeast Idaho attending, and they don't have enough resources to handle those special needs students. I think we've left rural schools out of the educational mix across the entire state of Idaho, and this won't fix that. A first-come, first-served system for funding education leaves a lot of folks out of what this state is going to need in the future. I don't think this is the time for H447.
Further debate? Seeing none, committee, we have before us.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, Representative Monks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, one of the sponsors, I feel I had to spend at least a few minutes just addressing some of the concerns and such out there. And I know these concerns won't change anybody's mind here on the committee, and so that is not my intent. I know we all have our opinions on that, but I think it's important to address a few things. One of them that came up was on funding versus a recession time. I reject the idea that if we had a recession, we would decide to cut school funding and leave a tax credit. That's our job. We do that. If there's a recession, if funding goes down, we will have to look under every rock, nook, and cranny, and that would include tax credits. It would include everything, and so I don't see that as an issue. One of the sponsors of this bill is the chairman of Revenue and as chairman of our Appropriations Committee. I trust her ability to fund the programs that we send to her. This is on the green sheet. It's been on the green sheet all year long. It is part of what has been allocated for our budget. The money is there if we choose to do it. As far as the ability for people not to be able to get this option, maybe they can't qualify or they have to wait for that credit. We do have the $10 million there for individuals who can't even wait for a credit to reimburse themselves. They need that money initially. Those people get the money as a grant the first year. The following year they can get the credit. They will be able to stay onto the program that way. Anybody who didn't get it maybe the first year, they can come back and apply for that grant and be able to get them. So I think we've addressed that in there. What I find the most interesting is on the arguments against this is it's all about money. We don't have the money. Public schools need more money. We shouldn't spend the money. What I don't hear is what's best for the students, what's best for the kids. The studies show all kids do better with public, including in the public. All students do better with a program like this, whether it's a voucher, whether it's a credit, whether it's a savings account, however you want it. The studies show they do better. I'm worried about the kids in the public school. I want them to have a better education. This will get it there. That's what I'm worried about. I'm not worried about who gets money. I'm worried about which kid gets educated the best, and this program makes sure that all kids get educated the best. Accountability's come up a lot. I reject any idea of anybody to say that a parent is not more concerned about their education than a bureaucrat. As much as I love my teachers and my kids' teachers and have had some of the best teachers there are, they are great, but they don't care about my kids' education as much as I do. Parents care about their kids' education. They are the ones who are accountable to this program, whether it's in public or private. I would argue that I'm not sure my parents have a whole lot of accountability when it comes to the public school. They can vote for new board members, yes, they can, but there's nothing more direct than being able to put your kid wherever you want to go. Do we have choice? Absolutely, we have choice. Many of the people who are fighting against this program fought against charter schools for the exact same reasons. Exact same reasons, exact same arguments we heard. We're going to take money away, not going to be better, and yet now they're out there saying, look, charter schools are great. I know all about charter schools. Gentleman who drove his kids from Emmett to Parma, my wife didn't do that quite that far, but she took my kids from Meridian to Hidden Springs when Hidden Springs Charter School opened up, and she did that 3 times a day. Because we had a kindergartner, so she had to go in the morning and in the afternoon, and then she'd go back in the afternoon and pick up her kids. And she did that for a lot of years. That was the only choice we had. We tried to get them into a different charter school that was closer, but we didn't hit the lottery. We didn't win that. So that's what we had to do. My wife was in a financial situation where she didn't have to work, and she was able to do that. Not everybody has that option. I've been real fortunate in my family. I've got 2 different sets of families, really. I have kids that have done very well in the public school. They went on to college. All of them had scholarships going to college, very smart kids. They did great in public school. I have 4 adopted children, and it's not worked out as well for all of them. One of them we had to move around to find a special needs program that didn't exist in the schools we were set up for. We kept moving around to finding them. We even tried a charter school, and that didn't work either for her. She needed more work and more help. I have a child that none of those options worked out, including charter schools, and we had to find a pod that we could put her in. Now, unless you think that I'm selfishly wanting this program because she can get money for that, she can't, because she's not a qualified teacher at that pod that she would go to, and so that this wouldn't help there in my family, but it would help other families. I'm about making sure that our kids have these choices and options. And I know, Mr. Chairman, this isn't changing minds, and I'm not trying to do that, but I'm trying to let everybody know why I support this program and why I spent the effort working with the good ladies, working on this particular program. And I couldn't remember Wendy's number, so I didn't say it. Sorry, Wendy. But that's why I've worked on this program, and I appreciate those people that have concerns and they're not able to support this. I understand it, and it's okay. I'm not mad, not angry. I just letting you know why I needed to be here on this program, and that's why I'm here on this legislation. And obviously, I do support the primary motion. I support the amended substitute motion as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Monks. Representative Boyle.
Could we have a roll call, please?
Roll call has been requested. We will have a roll call vote. Committee, before us is an amended substitute motion, which is to send House Bill 447 to the floor without recommendation. Our secretary will conduct a roll call vote.
Chairman Cannon,
Yes.
Representative Ehlers,
Yes.
Representative Dixon 1,
Yes.
Representative Manwaring,
Yes.
Representative Weber,
No.
Representative Shepard,
Yes.
Representative Cheatham,
No.
Representative Cornelis,
No.
Representative Durant,
No.
Representative Mickelson, Representative Monks,
Aye.
Representative Pickett,
Yes.
Representative Raymond, Representative Roten,
No.
Representative Boyle, Representative Necochea,
No.
Representative Burns.
No.
Committee, that motion has failed by an 8-9 count. We have before us a substitute motion to hold House Bill 447 in committee. We will have a roll call vote on that motion.
Chairman Cannon,
No.
Representative Ayers?
No.
Representative Dixon 1?
No.
Representative Manwaring?
Yes.
Representative Weber?
Yes.
Representative Shepherd?
No.
Representative Cheatham?
No.
Represent-
I changed my vote. Yes.
Representative Cornelis?
Yes.
Representative Durant?
Yes.
Representative Mickelson?
Yes.
Representative Monks?
No.
Representative Pickett?
No.
Representative Raymond?
Yes.
Representative Roten?
Yes.
Representative Boyle?
No.
Representative Necochea?
Yes.
Representative Burns?
Yes.
Representative Manwaring, will you restate your vote, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
That substitute motion has passed by a 10-7 vote. House Bill 447 will be held in committee. That concludes the agenda items for today. We will not have a meeting tomorrow. We stand adjourned.